Welcome to Real Talk, the show where we look at issues facing our youth. My name is Ome Kongo, I'm your host, and today we have a very special guest who has been traveling around the world working with young people. Reverend Marcia Dyson has been hailed as one of our nation's foremost religious figures, spiritual writers, and noted civil social scientists. Her special brand of wisdom and insight has been shared in leading pulpits across America, on lecture stages at many of the nation's outstanding universities, and on the pages of some of the most provocative magazines and books. Across the globe, she's worked with the Clinton Global Initiative, the Middle East Peace Project, and the Center for Social Justice and Policy at Georgetown University. And today she's going to talk to us about the state of our youth across the globe as well as in America. Welcome, Reverend Dyson.
Thank you for having me. Marcia is fine.
Okay. Well, there's so much I want to ask you and so much I want the audience to hear as it relates to your experiences. So I just want to get right to it. Now, the first question I had is, in your travels across the globe, what would you say is the status of our youth, particularly compared to youth in America?
Well, you know what? I would hope that the common thread for me is not one that is golden. It's really a tarnished thread, and it's one of poverty. It's one of a lack of childhood. It's a one of terror, and it's one of lack of a vision, which to me is the most saddened thing when I see and give me more despair than a sense of hope. There's no difference from the children who live in Cité Soleil in Haiti, where I visit, or the south side of Chicago, where I'm actually from, or the children who are still in Johannesburg in South Africa, all through Africa. And you see it more in Europe because of what they'll call the ghettoization of certain communities within Europe and France, particularly, and Spain and some of the other countries in Belgium, that the youth no longer have, or definitely in the Middle East and Afghanistan, Iran, Iraq, where you got bombs blowing up in your every day, and scrapple. In Africa, you may be turned into a boy soldier. In the urban cities and places within America, turned into a gangster, young gangster, pimping and prostituting and trafficking young girls and boys themselves. It's not a good look. You know, I'm old school for real. You know, I'm a real OG, a real old girl. I was like a 1989 Puff Daddy kind of thing, P. Diddy. Yeah. But when I grew up, you know, there was a time when even though your mother didn't have the leisure of sitting you on her lap and hugging you, because I grew up in poverty, my mother, nights time, she worked, but you had that little rhyme, twinkle, twinkle, little star. And now, not because only the city lights, but the children don't have the leisure to even look up at a star and know that it exists, to have that sort of moment, the age of innocence. Sure. You know, even if when the time when everybody in the world was poor, there were rituals in Africa. There were rituals within the African American community and rituals within the ghettos of even other ethnic communities, where you were brought into beyond the bar mitzvah or the baptism of the Catholic Church, where you had a sense of childhood and reverting over to adulthood with authority of an adult and with direction of adult, which was role models, either religious or otherwise, in schools. Now everybody is in such a panic, to me, that the children are so missed on this. So it's not a happy look for me, for the world.
And I want to be clear about this, because you know we're in Montgomery County, one of the richest counties in the country, and you've been all over this area and the globe. You're saying that you're seeing young people who are suffering in America, which we call the greatest country in the world. You see them suffering just as much as you see in other places. I'm
telling you, I live in one of the wealthiest suburbs in D.C., the 3rd Ward. And the reason why the former mayor was out of his office was that he wanted to bus the children from my ward in the 2nd Ward, which is quite affluent, over to the southeast side to place so these children could have this tennis center that was founded by Cora Berry, former Mayor Berry's wife, that the Williams sisters came in and helped to inaugurate, and Hillary Clinton at that time, being the first lady, came and helped her break the ground to bring these children over, which would have pushed those children who are at risk as far as gangs and prostitution and fear education out of a system. Not only taught them sports, which means that you learn about your body, and teamwork, though it's only paired, but you learn discipline about your body. It had an after-school program for it. They had entrepreneurship, where they actually created some of the Redskins and the Wizard Games paraphernalia to sell. So they learned about entrepreneurship as well. Well, when we had a heightened youth killing in Chicago, I was coming back from Cité Soleil, and people were saying that internationally Cité Soleil is the most dangerous city. At the same time, the news was, when I landed in Miami, it was in Chicago, so ABC wanted me to address the issue. So I wanted to go to I don't want to speak. I wanted the kids to speak. So I went over and looked at these children on the southeast side, and they gave me space over there. And these are some of the things that, it was in August, in the summer, where you think children want to be out with their teenagers, not hanging on a corner. Back in the day, would be doo-wopping or learning some new rap lyrics, if you're a rap master, you know, that they want to do these things, and girls just looking at her dream go by, and boys, you know, grooving like, you know, Jazzy G and Fresh Prince.
Absolutely.
That you had this romanticization of even a teenage life, and these girls dressed with their multicolored earrings and hoops that elephants could jump to, and the guys, you want to be thug life. But these are the stories they told me. In the height of First Lady, the first African-American president and First Lady, they didn't want to be like Barack Obama and Michelle. They didn't say that. They didn't want to be like the first couple of hip-hop, Jay-Z and Beyonce. They said to me that they wanted to be able to walk down the street in peace.
Wow.
The girls said that they wanted to be able to walk down the street and dress the way they want to dress without not being harassed. One kid said, I just want to go to school without somebody pushing up on me to sell drugs. But what was really telling, and it was funny if it wasn't so tragic, but one guy said, young guy, I think he was 16 or 15, that he actually wore a suit in the summertime and wore a bow tie because he thought if he was in the Nation of Islam, or the neighborhood perceived that he would get respect, no matter what we may think about the Nation of Islam. And I said, really? He said, yeah, but they caught me because they said that long word. I was like, no, I mean, that's Amharic. Assalamu alaikum, and he didn't know the response, and he got beaten up. See, so and this was like, if he was, you know, a comedian, if he was Chris Rock saying this, you would laugh. But this guy went to this extreme in order to walk down his neighborhood in peace. I mean, come on, the creativity to keep yourself from harm. And when you go across the country and you don't see children being able to play on playgrounds, like in Chicago, where you're a kid 4 years old being shot by a stranded bullet, then we got to address this. And you know, what's good about this conversation in the midst of a political campaign that I hope the president really pick up on is that we're no different than Afghanistan and Iraq, when the people cannot have true democracy. And human rights and civility is what the core of this nation is. Forget what the forefathers said. It's about civility, because even they had discord, but it was some civility. And yes, you can have the amendment right that you can have your guns, but that's the NRA pushing that. When they did that, when the forefathers wrote those things, they didn't have Uzis and submachine weapons and, you know, all this armory. They had no idea. You were fighting some Native Americans with bows and arrows and some darn muskets.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? At the most. So they couldn't foresee the weapons of mass destruction and the incubation of terrorism, of youth violence in this country by them not having, well, really, not by you wanting to keep what the first constitution makers wanted it, all white men, no women, and definitely, and slaves were not immigrants, and indigenous people were not even considered.
That's right.
So when we talk about going back to the day of the Constitution, we got like, really? Really? So that would have been no Jews, no Irish folks, no Native Americans, the people who owned the land trying to get across the border, oops, they owned it. But when it comes to children, I say we should have NRA, needy, responsible adults that know that when the circumstances
and
NRA, needing, responsible adults. Hip-hop has said it right. We don't build no boats. We don't build no planes. We don't ship dope from coast to coast. Now, you can correct me on that, because I ain't the old, you know, I said I'm OG,
that's good.
but not old rhythm. But you don't do that. So we need responsible adults to say, hey, since we put these weapons out there, these kids not manufacturing machine guns, how are they getting them? So if we're doing this, then you need regulations to bet or absolve yourself of your militarism within a domestic sphere sin.
Sure.
So I think it's a time in this political campaign that the RNC, the GOP, and the DNC, they need to really hone on to this, because it's like fighting, you know, you can't fight the same civil rights ways in the 60s, neither can you do this terrorism within our country.
Sure.
You know.
And that's amazing. Now, you talk about some of the suffering here. What are some of the issues that you've seen also in places like Haiti, a place that you're so passionate about? And we know we see on television, it's death, disease, whatever's going on as it relates to people dying. But why are you seem as passionate about Haiti as you are about South Side of Chicago, where you're from. Where does that come from?
I think that really the thread that allowed me, that I put, was one of poverty. If I had grown up middle class, I may not have had the empathy and sensitivity. But as far as I was concerned, even for the 50s, when I grew up as a kid, my life was Cité Soleil, without anything, not knowing if I could have a loaf of bread. You know, being an entrepreneur for selling snowballs, forget the cute little lemonade stands. I'm a crazy dancer because there was dance contests on the block club. But when I go to Cité Soleil, where you have absolutely nothing, and this is even before the earthquake, when you see children coming out of squalor, coming out post-earthquake, out under tents with starch uniforms on, white shirts, white bows in their hair. I'm saying, like, what the heck? With a primer under their arms, tagged, ragged, born from the hurricane and rains, desiring still an inferior education, because a lot of the schools in Haiti, they call them colleges, that somebody made it more entrepreneurial. You spring it up, you get a little money, the kids are getting inferior education, but the respect for education is so great there. But I see the potential with the university students that I interface with and take books to, and how they want to study international diplomacy. So when I was with President Clinton's foundation, I groomed these students to actually interact with the international community coming. So they did the PR, they corrected some very famous PR and marketing companies French for the press release. They met the richest man in the world there, Carlos Slim. They met President Clinton. They met the international. They met more people than you probably would have met, or I had met here in America, hanging in Washington, D.C. And these kind of moments where they grasped that and they took it, where they built a platform for youth that they now have incorporated for this new administration in Haiti. And I see that, you know, they're not made to be test takers, but for their desire for scholarship and knowing in a sense of the outside world, want to be integrated into it. And because Haiti is being rebuilt and the international is coming to them, they're taking keen advantage of it. And I like that. But our children won't have that infiltration of otherness. You know, we have a form of segregation within a desegregated society, because even the elite Negroes have desegregated themselves, segregated themselves out of the community. So you don't have
that's why they call you Reverend.
and haven't cussed. And that's what I see the difference. It really is like what you try to do, and what I really try to do, whether it's little children, high school students, and even young women, try to mentor them by role example. And I think that even the problem with our young women and some older women as well is becoming somewhat of a crisis to me, based upon the socialization of who they think they are, not only on hip-hop lyrics, but when you look at other reality shows that are out there that can do more harm than charm.
More harm than charm. And so you see in Haiti, and you see as well as America, that our kids actually have a yearning for this education, but it's just about getting access to it. Kids in Chicago not feeling safe. Kids in Haiti feeling issues as it relates to earthquakes and poverty.
In I remember when President Kennedy was shot, and for some reason I was sensitive to him when most maybe Negro children at that time we were called were not, because I'm an environmentalist from an early age, and my teacher told me that President Kennedy had said in 1962 that the water in 1990 was going to be like bitter, like in the biblical days. I'm like, 1990, oh my God, that's like so futuristic. And I went home and I collected the bathtub of water and told my family, 7 people, they couldn't drink water till 1990. Of course, they thought it was crazy. But it always put me in line was, what is this man saying? And who is this president? Because you talk about presidents, but I then knew about politics, and that president had meaning to me because he said something that resonated with me, saving something, you know, saving some water. So when he died, I felt like a blanket was pulled off of me. Maybe a white man who didn't even really care about me now that I learned my history, you know, except for being urged, and LBJ really was the savior of civil rights. But when I think of these children now, I imagine how vulnerable are you every day when the warfare is in your street, when girls, your bodies are not being sacred.
And it's that point that I want to come back to when we hit our break about the body being sacred, and as well as the arts, because you have some very poignant comments on that as well. Thank you. We'll be right back with more Real Talk.
explore new worlds. Read. Visit literacy.gov and let the journey begin.
Welcome back to Real Talk, the show where we look at issues facing our youth. My guest is Reverend Dyson, Marcia, as you allowed us to call you. As we were going into the break, you were talking about sacred, and you're talking about women. We live in a country now where people have spoken about a war on women. When you hear that terminology, what does that bring to your mind?
Well, you know, Eve Ensler founded the Vaginal Monologues, where she tried to talk about the pain of women who were victims of rape or domestic violence, and she was able, within this platform, to encompass the whole world and the pain, of physical pain of women as relates to their bodies. And I thought that was great, you know, but it's still, there's an increase in violence, especially domestic violence, how we might want to term that. And then when I looked at countries and how whether it's in Congo or other places, and even now in urban spaces where the women's bodies are used as weapons of war, the retaliation, you know, of rape, trying to dishonor the man by dishonoring the woman's body. That we, you know, I try to be very civil with it. I try to be an ordained minister. I try to be a social activist. Now just forget it. I'm militarism. You know, I mean, and I won't even tell you the word that I use, so I just call it, using the French, borrowing from my visits in Haiti, not a coup d'etat, but a femme d'etat, a woman takeover, and not a matriarchal invasion, but a sense of sacredness that I think women can align to, not so much their religion, but a spirituality and a sense of nature. And I think being able to coordinate civility a little bit better than the men really have been able to do. Because, you know, there was a commercial, it was a margarine commercial, which we use a lot. The adage says it's not nice to fool Mother Nature. But when you mess with the woman, you know, then you really do mess with the child. Because even when a woman carries a baby, you know, you get this vibe, the energy in the child, and that child when it's born can feel everything that has happened within those nine months. Then you have angry children, or if you're on crack, you have crack babies, and the same thing emotional. And so when women's lives are terrorized, then you have a whole system of this terror, and she might end up being the kind of mother that can mask it, and take care of her children, come outside of herself, and teach her children through methods of role modeling to be okay. But then you might have a child who, like Tupac says, even though you're my black queen mama, you're a crack queen mama, and you might just want to have to come out like some hip hoppers and say you're a B. But what it does is it destroys the core of, and to me, the most tangible sensitivity there is to the divine. And when I see the reality shows, what I'm seeing, which I explained to another CEO of a talk show, really the owner of a network, was that it's an exploitation of people's pain who are rendered invisible and voiceless.
That's right. Wow. Yeah.
It is. So what you are doing is giving somebody a mic who may not, we say we shouldn't have the mic, but because the churches and the mega churches, you're not allowed to testify either. You know what I mean? Like when you could say that you're going through something, or you've been through something, or some divine entity has been great to you, you use it in bumper sticker terms, like, oh, I'm too blessed to be stressed. Hello, really? Like, not me. Pour me a drink. My spirit is like Johnny Walker Red, hello, with some ginger ale mixed in it, okay? But you're not allowed to say that in church because God is so good, or you're not allowed to say in the street, or you're weak. And the vulnerability, and for me, the greatest sense of release is a testimony, good or bad. So what they have done is they exploit it because there's no deliverable of sanctity after you have the so-called reality. The reality that I want is the real I to you. And I get in trouble for a lot because when I write, my family members have great trepidation because I'm going to tell something about myself. I ain't just got over. I done went through some stuff.
That's right.
Okay?
That's right.
So I'm going to give you the blueprint, often with bloody trails and sometimes marked and inked with my tears, on how I got through this stuff. And then it becomes an example or a pattern for one.
That's
you know,
right.
Don't give me all this buttercream lollipop bull crap. You know, seriously. And I think that's it, and especially around women's lives too. You're catty, you know, and the gossiping is not what is endemic of not having trustworthiness within a relationship.
That's right. That's right.
And why can't we have the trustworthiness, whether it's in a marital relationship or a girlfriend relationship or sorority or fraternity or even a governmental relationship, is because of greed or because of need.
That's right. Those are great points. You're preaching. I'm loving it. I'm really loving it. We talked about war on women, and then you went into a little bit as it relates to hip hop, and you talked about reality shows. So we're getting into the world of film and entertainment, something I know that you're passionate about.
Absolutely.
And tell us about this project, this Artivist. And I know a lot of people don't know about that. Please explain that to us.
Artivist will be celebrating its 9th anniversary this year. It was started by a young lady named Daniki, who felt the need that there were a lot of stories that should be told that would help us understand, those who don't travel, what the predicaments were in other countries. But it also allowed, a lot of the films were and are made by women, because what it allowed them to do, again, about the exploitation of pain, is let these women have a safe space to tell their stories and to give us an idea about what it's like to live in their country, so that when we are sensitive toward that and we are the great citizens, and we then means that we are understanding what goes on policy-wise as far as foreign policy within our country, we can advocate for something better than somebody telling us from the hill what they are going to do. We can be agents and be advocates for what should be done, particularly in that country, around women and children. But also, it's not only about filmmaking, it's about the environment and human wildfare life and the stabilization and fine arts. We got a talk show about The Voice and American Idol and American Got Talent. Well, you know what? You're the hip hop person. Maybe you want to do this. I want to do a show called The Lyricist. Because if you have to be challenged about your words, then you can't get up there and say the F, the M, F, the B.
Exactly.
I think you get a lot of thumbs down. But if you have to be a lyricist, then you got to bring your poetry on. You have to bring on a Smokey Robinson. You're going to have to bring on a Aretha Franklin or somebody who have a sense of rhyme but most importantly, reason. So what I like about Artivist is I have an opportunity to be around people who understand how to responsibly use the platform and the power of cinema, of visual arts, and also of the voice, because it also will include music as well this year.
Okay, that's beautiful. So you talked about a lot of despair that's going on across the globe, and some of the great responses to projects like Artivist. Do you find yourself on a daily basis remaining optimistic when you see all of the challenges that we face?
Even though I'm agitated a lot and I cuss a lot, I have to stay hopeful. Even though I'm not hopeful, it makes me prayerful, because I cannot imagine, I don't think that I'm not the only one, because I've met so many wonderful people around the world, and a lot here in our nation, in our nation's capital, that not only are praying, we're at a point in life where we need meditation, but we need mediation. We need prayer, but we need purpose and purposeful people. We need sanctity, and we need some sanctions against injustices. And what the art form, it really is a way for culturally addicted people to invade their space with a PSA announcement that we hope won't go over blink, and their attention deficit disorder won't allow them to have memory of.
Wow, yeah. So when you think about young people who are watching us right now, who may have experienced similar situations that maybe you've experienced growing up in poverty, or situations that you may have seen, and are really looking for ways to hold on, get to the next day. I mean, we're hearing about school shootings and the like.
Yes.
What advice would you give to them? What would you say right now to inspire them?
Well, I would tell them, first of all, unfortunately, because of their lack of childhood, they've been more adult, or have to mature as far as survival. Then, in this way, be an adult. I think they should form their coalitions and make demands upon their school system, their commissioners, and the Board of Education, wherever they might be. I would ask them to do what I ask young people in correctional facilities, which was the hardest thing for me, for young men who, before they were going to a big house, that I said, Biggie was right. Christmas did miss us, and birthdays were the worst days. This whole notion of a father throwing you a football, or you hitting a ball with a bat, that might not be your reality. And I know that you have to survive. You might be an Aryan, you might be Vietnam, you might be the brother, and even within the blackness or the whiteness or the Asian otherness you have fractures within that, and you go to a big house and you may have to beat a brother down for survival. But I want you all to look in each other's eyes and say, man, I'm only doing this for survival. When I get out of here, I'm going to make it different in reality. And the warden looked at me like, woman, you crazy. But I saw the tears in their eyes, and the guys really came up and hugged me. And I said, because I know you're going to go over there where men are going to make you the bee. And I'm feeling you. And there are things that are going to may happen that you will never be able to articulate, but it's okay. Even in the midst of what you're going to have to do within survival, there's this I word. It has nothing to do with you. It has to do with your integrity. In every aspect of our lives, no matter how bad it may seem, there's one thing that one person told me when I was 13 that really has kept me sane and not being a crazy woman in so many aspects of my life. It's the integrity. I can hear it echoing in my head, keep your integrity. It's the invisible mentorship, not a person that can die or can be tarnished or to fall off of the pedestal, but it's something that's so core to me that whenever I'm in my own moments where I want to like do something that's going to harm me and really harm others, whether it's with the lash of my tongue, which can be wicked, or with an action which can have serious ramifications on someone, I hear that I. It's like the invisible divine says, keep your integrity. Don't keep your Bible. Don't keep your religious artifice around your neck. Keep your integrity. That means some sense of self-control. But if all these things around you are impacting you, then you're going to have to stand up. Be a warrior on that gangster. Make a gangster move on your education board. Make a gangster move on the police department. Make a gangster move. That's what you need to do, because you have the wherewithal and you got the cash. Your ghetto ain't my ghetto, because like when I couldn't buy bread, you got bread and rolling with some rims. I didn't have a car. I had a little red wagon. Come on, so I have to take you where you are. No, you may not be a twinkle, twinkle little star, but I don't want you to be a fallen star at such an early age.
That's right. And it seems like from your experiences, you would say to combine that integrity with service.
Absolutely.
A message a lot of young people
which makes
getting.
ears. I ears. Now we got to finish that. I ears what? I ears what? Okay, being ebonic. But I ears. That's right.
How do you feel like our young people need to get the importance of service? What would you say to them to want to inspire them to get out and serve in ways that you have?
You know what? This is when we need to be responsible with us. We need RNRA, because it's hard. I mean, you're walking around a community like a zombie. You have no direction. You have no resources. You have no one pulling you together. And this is when the church community, you really need to do a better services. There are very few. It's really hard to get me in a church on a Sunday morning. But the few churches that I do find have a small sanctuary and a large community center. It's because it should be like this. No matter whether it's a church or any other civic or social agency, that entity should only be like a gas station. It should be small enough to pump me up, but the vehicle which should carry all of that, the passengers should be greater.
That's right.
So we need to ask our churches to do a little bit more better in how they do it. Just like a warden who was very Christian at one of these correctional facilities for girls I went to, who told me I can't hug the girls. I'm like, really? Give me what? These girls need a hug.
That's right.
And then the girls fought me on a hug because they had been so sexually exploited they could not stand the other touch. And they created what we call situational lesbianism, because they only saw themselves as sexual beings. So if they wasn't having sex in some form, they felt like a non-entity. I'm hugging these girls.
That's right.
That's right. So at the same time, I always tell the young people, the reason why I went on the southeast side, I could have gotten up there on ABC and talked about it and give them statistics from Soweto to Chicago, from City Soleil or Philly or Compton. But I said, no, you know what, let the people who are being impacted tell you their stories. And even the cameraman cried. They had, like what Nancy Wilson in her song said, seen some things that I should have never seen, been places that I should have never been.
That's right. Wow, you've given us a lot today. Can you give us a way that people can reach out to you as we close out today?
On my Twitter account, at Marcia, Marcial, Dyson, D, as in David, Y-S-O-N.
Okay.
I look forward to their tweets and their comments, and hopefully the good things that people are doing, especially our youth, that they can take control. It doesn't have to be a juvenile detox, but we need to have more responsible adults and policies. But the kids, I think that if you put in an adult situation, don't respond in stupid adult ways with violence. Be more civil, or try to be civil, and form your coalitions of justice and peace, and knock some of the doors down yourself.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
That's going to do it for another episode of Real Talk. Once again, my name is Ome Congo. If you have any questions, feel free to email me at realtalk@omecongo.com. And remember, our children are 50% of our population, but 100% of our future. Let's make sure we're taking care of them. See you next time.